He'll outlet it to Phyllis on the far side wing to McEwen. Top of the three, lets it fly, and he knocks it down. Gets it over to Phyllis. Phyllis takes a quick jumper as he takes the catch. Can't get it. Hughes is there for the rebound for Otterbein, and he's there for the putback right of the rim. And it's intercepted away by Chase Moyer that time, who picked his back pocket. Moyer with a no-look bounce pass to McKenzie on the right side of the rim, and McKenzie gets it to fall. Fakes a pass. Now he penetrates towards the basket. Kicks it out free throw line. Three on the way from the corner for Chase Moyer, and he's able to knock it down.
From the studios of 33 College View, it's time for the Todd Adrian Coaches Show here on WOBN 97.5. Here is your host, David Kinder.
Good afternoon, and we welcome you into the Todd Adrian Coaches Show here from the studios of 33 College View. I'm your host, David Kinder. We have a great show planned for you today. Joining me in studio, head basketball coach Todd Adrian and Otterbein freshman forward Matt Hughes. And today's show is brought to you in part by Westerville Automotive. Serving the Westerville area for 20 years, they have two locations on Westerville Road and in the Uptown area, just seconds away from Otterbein on Main Street. They're on the web at westervilleautomotive.com. You can follow them on Facebook at Westerville Automotive Uptown or call them at 614-890-6700. Coach, Matt, thanks for joining us today here in studio. Since we last talked, Otterbein suffered a pair of tough 16-point losses, 72-56 to Ohio Northern last Wednesday at home and 70-54 to Muskingum on the road. Cards now sit at 3-16 on the year, 2-10 in Ohio Athletic Conference play. Coach, let's talk about the past four games overall. In Otterbein's past four games, they've either had a lead or they've been trailing by 5 or less at halftime, ended up losing each of those by 3 or more. What's been the biggest struggles for the Cards in the second half this year?
Well, I think just consistency all the way across. You know, we've done some nice things. You know, fought back in a couple of those games, and have been playing good teams. I mean, you know, Mount Union, one of the best teams in our league. You know, Wilmington, we were up on. They made a comeback and made some plays. And I was watching that. Who was it the other night? It was the Duke-Virginia game. Virginia's in control of that game. Duke just made some plays at the end. I feel like that's what happened to Wilmington. Mount Union, you know, when we could have gotten, you know, really possibly blown out, we fought back in that second half, and we had it cut down to a very manageable number. You know, some of these games, 16-point losses these last 2 weeks, I told the guys just yesterday, you know, when you look at it and you examine it, it's really an 8 to 9 point game that in the end they make some free throws, they get a couple no-brainers at the end when we're trying to extend ourselves and do some things that we don't necessarily do in a comeback type of a situation.
Matt, focusing on that Ohio Northern game first, the Polar Bears started 0 of 10 on their three-pointers. They ended up hitting 7 of 11 down the stretch from long range. Why were they able to start hitting their long shots?
I think we were focusing more on stopping the drives of the basket since earlier in the game that's what they had to focus on since they were shooting well. And we were more packed into the defense. So once they found out that we were closer to the hoop, the three started opening up a little bit.
Seemed to be a very physical game. Things got a little chippy at times. You were matched up with a former high school teammate of yours from Bishop Watterson, and Joey Diario. What's it like competing with a guy that last year you were teammates with?
It's definitely a new experience for me. I'm not used to going up against guys like him, but it was a fun game for both of us, I'd say.
Coach, turnovers, again, a concern in that ONU game. 16 of them. I know it's been your goal this year to try to get it below 15. How much has the turnover battle played into the Cardinals' losing streak?
Well, we continue to put ourselves kind of behind the 8 ball when we do things like that. You know, we are playing teams that press. A lot of our league right now is more of a pressure-type league, and you know, it's taken some getting used to. I thought we've done a better job here in the last couple of weeks against those teams. You know, we're going to face some teams that really press. You know, John Carroll tomorrow night does that for us. You know, it's decision-making, getting comfortable with each other. It's made a little more difficult by, you know, having to get guys in and out of the lineup when you have starters like Trey and Matt that are going out for, you know, 3 to 4 games at a time. Doesn't make it any easier, but, you know, it has been a challenge, and it's something that we're continually working on in practice with just our fundamentals. And then obviously, you know, learning how to attack what the other team's trying to do to us. You know, those two things combined, and then getting some game experience and learning, you know, how hard you have to work to be good at what you're supposed to be doing. We're just going to have to keep plugging away and do what we can do.
Moving towards that Muskingum game, Matt, Coach just mentioned it. I noticed your left arm in a sling there that happened in the Muskingum game. If you could just tell us how the shoulder's feeling and what point that happened in the Muskingum game.
It's feeling a little better than it did on Saturday, but in the first half I was on a fast break layup and we collided in the air, and I tried to catch myself on the ground and just pop my shoulder out a little bit.
Any expectations on how long you're going to be out?
As of right now, I'm just playing it by day, see how it feels, but I'm hoping to be back in a week or so for the Capital game.
Coach, taking another look at that Muskingum game, another difficult loss. You opted to go with a change in the starting lineup with Mark McEwen and the team's leading scorer, Jake Phillips, on the bench. Ended up starting Clayton Schaefer and Josh Lyle, both getting their first starts of their Otterbein career. It wasn't too long before Phillips and McEwen were substituted back into the ball game, so what was the reason for the switch?
Well, we had a group of guys that were a little bit late to one of our team functions on the day of the game, and so it's not unlike what goes on the court. If you're not where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing on that court, then bad things happen and losses. And when you're not where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing off the court, bad things happen in the classroom. Bad things happen then. So we're still a young team learning some lessons both on and off the court, and sometimes messages have to be sent, and there's some guys that have been working hard and guys that are showing up and doing what they're supposed to be doing, and sometimes as a coach it's about rewarding those guys as much as it is anything else.
Otterbein fell in New Concord. The officials call 42 fouls in this game. Coach Gene Ford of Muskingum certainly showed on the court that he was not a fan of the officiating. What did you think of the game that the Zebras called?
Well, I thought the way the Muskingum was playing, they probably could have called 62 fouls or 72, but they're not going to do that. And again, it's February and it's the OAC, so I think the team that's more aggressive usually ends up winning, and I don't think that was us that night. And I'll never blame the officials for anything. The other team has to play with the same set of officials as we do. I just want our guys to be able to get through those kind of situations and learn how to play when it's been called tight. I thought at times we did a pretty good job of that. We had a game plan. We adjusted our game plan to maybe kind of build in that the way that it was being officiated. I thought it worked out for us pretty well. We missed some wide open looks, that some effort plays that we made that got us second chances. Matt right here was battling. We used our head one time to keep a ball alive and get it to a teammate, and I feel bad because I thought while we didn't necessarily go into the game with the mindset that we needed, and I thought that showed early. We did show a lot of fight, and while the end game, it was 16-point loss, right there at the end, we get a couple of shots to fall that are wide open looks from good shooters, and that outcome could have been completely different.
Now, when Coach says use their head, I think he literally meant used his head. It was a play that went off of Chase Moyer's forehead that went, I believe, right into
Christian
the hands.
Meister, wasn't it?
Was it Meister?
I think it was Meister,
Went
yeah.
off the head of Meister, and I think right into the hands of you, I believe it was, Matt. Matt, much of the second half, 3 of the 5 usual starters were on the bench with foul trouble. Phyllis, Brian McKenzie, Daryl Miller all had 4 fouls in the game. How much of an impact did that have in the final result of the game?
That definitely affected it a lot because those 3 usually the getting the ball up the court, setting up everything. And when they weren't there, it was definitely a new thing that we're not used to.
We'll take our first break of the program. When we return, we'll talk about Otterbein's upcoming games this week with John Carroll and Baldwin Wallace. You're listening to the Todd Adrian Coaches Show on 97.5 WOBN. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm LeVar Burton, and I'm proud to be a book person. How do I choose a book? Sometimes it's the cover, sometimes it's the title. I guess I'm pretty visual. If a book's really impressing me and the writing is really good, I will peek and see what the last paragraph is, because the endings of books should rock you. I am a book person, and if you're a book person too, read to a child and spark a lifetime of ambition. Join me at bookpeopleunite.org, because reading is fundamental. A public service announcement brought to you by Reading is Fundamental, Library of Congress, and the Ad Council.
Hey Cardinal fans, Otterbein Athletics on the Radio is brought to you in part by Westerville Automotive. Serving the Westerville area for 20 years, they have 2 locations on Westerville Road and in the Uptown area, just seconds away from Otterbein on Main Street. They're on the web at westervilleautomotive.com. You can follow them on Facebook at Westerville Automotive Uptown or call them at 614-890-6700. That's Westerville Automotive.
This is Head Coach Todd Adrian, and you're listening to Cardinal Basketball on 97.5 WOBN Westerville, your source of Otterbein athletics.
There be many pirates that sail these 7 seas. Barbosa, Blackbeard, Jack Sparrow. But there be only one pirate you need care about. The MC DJ MC. Every Thursday from 8 to 10, he sails for Pirate Radio on WOBN, playing everything you want to hear on your college radio station, The Wild Card.
Fewer than 5 out of 100 people give blood. Ever wonder why they do it?
It's the one thing that we can do that we can always afford to do, and hey, you get a snack afterwards, so.
Snacks are great. I had never knew my blood type, and I found out in doing this that I'm O negative, so there's that added pressure knowing that everyone can use my blood at any time, and so I feel like it's my responsibility.
It's a little extra bragging power, too, knowing that you're a universal giver.
Yeah, I'm pretty special.
Call 1-800-RED-CROSS or visit redcrossblood.org to make an appointment today.
I'm Drew Brees, and being a dad means the world to me. And one of the most important things any parent can do is make sure their kids get active at least 60 minutes each day. Studies show that physical activity not only helps kids stay healthy, it can enhance important skills like concentration and problem solving, which can improve academic performance. This means physical activity can help your kids in the most important game of all, life. Learn more at fitness.gov.
Brought to you by HHS.
Hello, and we welcome you back to the Todd Adrian Coaches Show here on 97.5 WOBN. I'm your host, David Kinder. Coach Adrian and the OAC's third leading freshman scorer, Matt Hughes, in studio with us to preview Otterbein's games coming up this weekend. And Otterbein will play their Cleveland schedule now. They have a Wednesday game with John Carroll and a Saturday game with Baldwin Wallace. Both those games played at the Reich Center, and you can hear both those games right here on 97.5 WOBN. Coach, we talked on Saturday in the post-game show about the team's chances of making the OAC tournament seem like they're pretty slim now. But internally, is that still the team goal with 6 games left this year?
Well, I think the team goal's always been the same, especially with where we're at as a program. Just trying to get better every day, seeing what happens. Obviously, we'd like to make the tournament, but in the end, it's part of the process is week by week, game by game, day by day, and it's something we've been focused on. I don't know if we haven't had the best practices the last couple of weeks, and I think it's shown on the court.
John Carroll's coming to this game 13-5, coach third in the OAC, but they're coming off a surprise loss Saturday to Ohio Northern. You've seen both of these teams play. Now you've played against both of these teams. Were you surprised when you saw that the Polar Bears beat the Blue Streaks on Saturday?
Not at all. Ohio Northern number one. At Ohio Northern's a tough place to play, and that's where it was. We've been up there, and it's just they play with a lot of confidence at home. It's an unusual setting. It's a great setting. But it's an advantage to them. And John Carroll, their worst nightmares are going to go against 5 guards. They have some big guys that like to patrol the paint. They press, and they rely on turnovers. And Ohio Northern, if you've seen them play, they have a lot of talented guys that are a little bit smaller, pretty quick, and can handle the ball. So that is not, and we've talked before about how difficult it is and how much matchups really matter. A team that's good, a team that's not good, you can throw that all out the window when you talk styles. And I think that's the epitome of what happened the other night was John Carroll's style is very effective against teams that don't have a lot of experienced guards. It's effective against teams that like to throw the ball inside because they do have really good shot blockers in there. And teams that can't guard on the perimeter because those big guys can also shoot the three. And all three of those things are things that Ohio Northern does very well.
Matt, had you have not hurt your shoulder in that Muskingum game, you would have been matched up with one of the conference's best big men in JCU senior forward Jake Hollinger, leading his team in scoring with 12 points per game. He leads the OAC in blocks per game. You already played against him once in a 92-72 loss in University Heights in mid-January. What do you remember about playing opposite of him?
Well, I was out that game as well with a leg injury earlier in the season.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot.
But definitely watching him play, I think it'd be a good matchup. Definitely help me improve as a player because he's so talented, and I think that going against him would push me into being a player I'd like to be someday.
You did get to watch that game against John Carroll. Otterbein really had some troubles with the press defense, and John Carroll also runs that mass substitution when they run 5 new guys into the game at once. They're a very deep team. How are the Cardinals better prepared to handle that?
I think definitely that now that we know what's coming, because last game was kind of sporadic for us. We came in and we're just pushing it at more than we're used to, and now that we know what they're going to do, we have to set up our game plan to counteract that so we have a better chance for success.
Coach, looking towards next Saturday's matchup with Baldwin Wallace at home. The last time the Cards played BW in Berea, tempers got a little bit flared. It was a little bit of a chippy game. Not a shoving match, as we said. Any concerns about anything like that happening again in this game?
Baldwin Wallace has become kind of another rivalry for us for some reason. We're not geographically very close. We don't recruit, a lot of the same guys. But, we have some fight in us, I think, especially in certain people. I'd like to see it in all 7 or 8 guys that we play. And when I say fight, I mean not fighting, but competitive spirit, and that's what I'm challenging 6 games left. Who knows if we'll get in the tournament? It doesn't look good. But that doesn't mean when you go out there and take the court, you have an Otterbein uniform on, you shouldn't do everything you can to represent in a positive manner, but at the same time defend, all those guys that played before us. And if somebody gets chippy with you, and I expect our guys to stand up and not take it from anybody, whether we're the number 1 team in the conference or we're the number 8, 9 team in the conference. And I think that's what happened up there. The officiating. They let it go in the OAC, and so when that happens, sometimes you're going to get, something or other. It was a little bit blown out of proportion when you watch the film. There was a little bit of flopping going on, and I think that made it look worse than it was. But yeah, we'll have our hands full, and John Carroll, Matt didn't play, neither did Trey Miller. He was out at that time, I believe. So handling their pressure, so it's something we could do a little bit better this time, with our starting point guard on the court. And then managing our emotions. And being able to play with confidence, being able to play hard, but also being able to maintain, an awareness of what we're supposed to be doing and not let, emotions get control of what we do and take us out of our focus from.
BW is led by senior Justin Roth, who's trying to be the league's first player to average 20 points per game since Brian Pollock did it for Otterbein in 2009. When you played him earlier this year, you guys held him to a season-low 4 made field goals. What's the key to trying to stop him?
Well, I think we had some guys that stepped up and did a really good job on it. Brian McKenzie usually gets the other team's best player, and Brian was he's a tough guy to score against when he wants to be. He hasn't been as consistent as I think we'd like him to be this year, but there's a lot of other factors that go into that, and I would say he's a good matchup for him. Team defense is also something that we're really striving to do better at. I think philosophically, we don't ever take the approach that we're going to let somebody get their points and try and stop everybody else. We'll try and make him take more shots to get his average. That will help our team out in the long run. When Brian and guys like Ben and Trey, Jake Phillips even, Brian usually gets the majority of the minutes, but we also have other guys that do a pretty good job defensively, and I thought they did that night. It'll be something we need to do again because he is, he's a good player. And like you mentioned, those guys from John Carroll tomorrow night, they have a lot of good players, and they go 10 deep, and they are like Kentucky in that they're pressing and they're always up in your shorts, and they have 5 guys that do it. He throws 5 guys right back in, and so you have to kind of get used to playing against that, and that's one of their weapons. Not only have good players, but they have that depth, and Baldwin Wallace has a lot of experience, and they've been there before, and those guys have played for championships, and it's going to take our best effort and a lot of focus to try and knock them off.
An Otterbein 73-56 loss in Berea earlier this year. Matt, you scored a team-high 14 points in that game. What do you remember from that game and from any film that you've watched of the Yellow Jackets that they do really well that we should look out for?
I think they definitely move the ball and get good shots. They were good at shooting 3. They shot a lot of threes when we played them, and they were just knocking them down that game. So I think if we bring the pressure out and guard our men, then we should be good.
Coach, Matt just mentioned it, they're the best three-point shooting team in the league this year. They're the only one with a 40% conversion on their three-pointers, and they've made the most of them this year. Conversely, Otterbein's given up more three-pointers than anyone else in the OAC. How important will it try to be to try to stop the three ball?
Well, we got to guard better all over. We haven't done a great job guarding the three. We haven't done a great job guarding the post. We really need to get back to fundamental defense and like Matt just said, guarding our man and keeping him out of areas that he wants to be in. Not letting them touch the ball in the post. It kind of starts there for me. I think a lot of teams have gotten 3 points and open 3-point shots because we haven't been able to keep the ball out of the post. And when that happens, then we're put in bad positions as far as our guards having to help down a little bit. So we just got to work harder before the catch. Not put ourselves in bad situations as far as where we're closing out on good shooters that are also quick. And once we can iron out some of those issues and get a little bit more dedicated to the team philosophy of defense, I think you'll see those numbers start to change.
You can listen to both of those games right here on WOBN 97.5. Myself and Elijah Gonzalez will have the call. The Cards tip at home with JCU at 7:30. Our pregame coverage will start at 7:15. Same with Saturday's game with Baldwin Wallace. Well, we'll take our final break of the program. When we come back, we'll take a look around Division I college basketball and get Coach and Matt's thoughts on D1 hoops and the best teams so far this year. Listening to the Todd Adrian Coaches Show here on 97.5 WOBN. We'll be right back after this.
Hey Westerville, did you know there is only one showcase on WOBN that features country music? I am talking about Campus Country. I'm here every Monday night at 8 playing the best country music. There's always time for country artist news, and on my show, you'll get to hear the newest songs and unreleased songs that you can't hear on those big stations. So tune into Campus Country every Monday night at 8 o'clock right here on your college radio station, 97.5 The Wild Card.
WOBN 97.5 is your seat to Cardinal basketball this season. WOBN will have live coverage of 25 men's and women's basketball games. Be sure to tune in for the pregame show 15 minutes before tip-off and stay with us after the game for stats, analysis, and player and coach interviews. Check out WOBN.net for a complete broadcast schedule.
Would your business survive a disaster? Nearly 2/3 of businesses aren't prepared for an emergency. And 40% of businesses that experience a disaster never recover. Make an emergency plan now, before it's too late. For a free online tool that helps you develop an emergency plan to keep your business up and running should disaster strike, visit ready.gov/business. Brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the American Red Cross, and the Ad Council.
This is Marshall Crum, senior forward on your Otterbein basketball team, and you're listening to Cardinal basketball on 97.5 WOBN, Westerville, Ohio, your source for Otterbein athletics.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
I want to be a warm fleece on a cold day.
Football
I want to be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Today is Saturday. 60 minutes of physical activity a day and eating well can help get your child healthy. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov. That's letsmove.gov. A message from USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
This presentation of Otterbein basketball on the radio is brought to you by our sponsors: Ohio Health, Roush Honda, BMI Federal Credit Union, and Westerville Automotive.
I used to be one of those irresponsible guys, always goofing off and acting like a real jerk. Girls wouldn't give me the time of day. Hey, Julie, do you have the time?
Shut up.
Then, 30 days before my 18th birthday, I went down to my local post office and registered with Selective Service. Overnight.
I became aware of the man I had suddenly become, eligible for federal student loans, government jobs, and job training, responsible and mature. Hi, Julie. Dinner tonight?
I'd love to, Brad.
So register with Selective Service. It's what a man's gotta do.
And we welcome you back to the world-famous Todd Adrian Coaches Show here on 97.5 WOBN. It's time now for our final segment. I'm joined with head basketball coach Todd Adrian and Matt Hughes, and it's time now that we talk about something basketball, but not exactly pertaining to Otterbein. And in Division I hoops this year, it's been a very exciting year. Over the past weekend, Virginia lost to Duke. They are no longer undefeated. That leaves Kentucky as the nation's only Division I basketball team. They are 21-0. And we talked about in the break a little bit, if we like the Wildcats' chances to go undefeated this whole year, it'd be the first time it's been done since the 1976 Indiana Hoosiers led by Bobby Knight. So, Matt, we'll start with you. If you want just some overall thoughts on D1 basketball and if you like the odds for UK to go undefeated this year.
I'm thinking that they will go undefeated. I don't want to say they will, but they definitely have the talent to. It's a long, hard season, but I think they definitely have the talent to get the job done.
You see any problems in the future with them? We talked about in the break, a lot of sophomores back this year, not quite the young team that they were. So if there was a stumbling point in the future for the Wildcats, where do you think it would be?
The only thing I could see is they have a bad recruiting class one year, and they graduate a bunch. But I think they're set for the next few years probably.
I mean, Matt, what about that 1-16 matchup in the first round of the tournament? I mean, David off air was just talking about how much of a trap game that could be for the Wildcats.
You said,
isn't that what you said?
You said that the only time they have close games is when they have a weaker opponent that they don't quite respect as much. So then I said, well, what about when they get into the tournament and they might have to play a team they don't respect as much? And
the 1-16 seed is when you think they could get upset. Then is that what you're saying?
You can never rule anything out. I would never bet the 16 seed to beat the Wildcats, but you can never rule anything out, Coach.
It's legitimate. I mean, I'm with Matt on this one, though, David.
You got very excited.
I think they're going to be able to go through the 1-16 seed and make it to the Final Four and then cap things off in Indianapolis. I saw them when they were playing New Orleans. The last time they had a great freshman class and a returning sophomore class, and it's just so hard. A lot of coaches say defense travels. And back to Virginia, Coach Bennett has rebuilt that program. And they're kind of the anomaly in that ACC. They're a very, very good academic school, and he can't just get anybody in there. And if you look at them early years, they didn't do real well in the ACC, and I've shown that to our guys because I think we're going to kind of be the same way. Defense, great offense, patience, execution. Those are the kind of things that we're trying to build, and I know he's done that at Virginia. And that game the other night, if you saw that, Duke just made plays. Very unusual first half for Virginia with giving up so many transition points, but in the end they had control of it, and those freshmen from Duke, they just stepped up and knocked things down. And I really feel like Kentucky, especially the way they play 10 guys, when you have 10, even if you're young, when you have 10 that are that talented, every night he does a pretty good job of finding 6 or 7 that are having an on night, if you will. And I think once tournament time comes around, they're going to ratchet up another notch just like they did last year and make that run.
We talked about last week about Coach K at Duke. What is it that Coach Calipari does differently or maybe similarly at Kentucky that Duke doesn't do?
Well, I think having watched that Kentucky behind the scenes last year, he's going about it almost completely differently than anybody else. It's almost like it's an NBA proving grounds, if you will, developmental team. And he said it. I'm not bringing these guys here to get degrees. I'm bringing them here to get to the NBA. And it's the reality of their level. The complete contradiction to what and who we are. And we talked about it off air. Not only is he doing it a little differently, but he doesn't have to plan on going against 4th and 5th year seniors anymore. One of the big advantages Coach Ryan has had, and the reason at Wisconsin he's been so successful, great coach, but he's also played with 4th and 5th year guys because at Wisconsin he's not recruiting those one and done guys typically. He's got some that might be a couple and out now, but I think that's why they've been able to maintain it consistently, because when you're playing older guys that know and they've been there and they know how to compete at that level, you get a little bit more consistent product on the court. And for years and years and years now, I believe at 16 or 17, he's made the national tournament. Whereas Kentucky's going the opposite direction. We want those guys that are uber talented and they run a system that allows those guys to make some mistakes. They're a little more up tempo. They got to turn teams over so they can really cover up for whatever freshman quote unquote mistakes that might be made with their talent, their system, and their depth. So it's interesting to know, and you bring up Duke, and it was Coach K not too long ago, kind of made that statement. I'm not going to recruit one and done guys. And then he's also now since made the statement that while I wanted to do it that way, I didn't really like competing against them, because at the Division I level, even though it's 1 year, and we've seen that Ohio State with a couple of their players, those guys are good enough to really be able to make that much of a difference and win you games when it matters by just making plays with their unbelievable talent. And I know Coach K has gone to that more recently and obviously had some great success. And credit to him for being able to adapt and kind of roll with the times and do what he needs to do to keep that program rolling along. And I think Coach Mata is doing the same thing. Coach Ryan now has got a couple of those guys. And you see it from the Jayhawks, and you see it from Kentucky and Duke and North Carolina. It's the way of the world right now with the way things are set up.
So you can take it to the bank. The Wildcats will go undefeated this year, win the tournament, get past that tough 16 seed, and win if they can get past the 16, I like their odds.
Well, they've played some. I saw a stat the other night, and they've played some of the top teams in the nation, and they've held them to an unbelievably low field goal percentage. I know the Jayhawks, I think, shot like 17 or 23%, something like that, and the list just was about 7 teams that as a coach you just think, well, you just can't beat that team when not only are they so gifted offensively, but they play that kind of stifling defense. It's just it's impressive to watch. And if you have a chance to see them in person, it's even more impressive when you're there courtside than when you see it on TV, because you just can't understand how long and how athletic and how, unless you turn them over or you shoot from 28 feet, you're just not going to get an open look.
It certainly will be fun to see how it plays out. Well, Coach and Matt Hughes, we thank you for joining us on the program. We'll see you tomorrow night at the Reich Center. You can listen to that game at 7:30 here on WOBN. Myself and Jeff Murtaugh will have the call. Our pregame coverage will start at 7:15. Also, don't forget to listen to next week's Coach's Show. Same time, same place. For Coach Adrian, Matt Hughes, this is David Kinder saying so long. We'll talk to you tomorrow.